Good evening everyone, I'm Tom Mallet. I am the video creator for Bioactive Leopard Gecko Journey, and this presentation is going to look at the ecology, the theory behind ecology, and how we can apply this to a sample leopard gecko bioactive habitat in captivity. So I hope you enjoy, and if you have any questions, please put them in the comments box, and if you are interested in these videos, then please do subscribe to my channel. So the aims of this brief guide is to get a bit of an understanding into the definition of the terms ecology, biodiversity, ecosystem and habitat. Then we're going to introduce some key theorists in the field of ecology, and then we are going to think about ways of applying ecological theory to a sample leopard gecko bioactive habitat in captivity. And I'm going to be using my own leopard gecko, Mr. Jinx, as that sample. We're going to look at habitat design, replication, and ecosystem management, followed by a short conclusion and a list of references at the end. So, ecology, the study of organisms and how they interact with their environment. Biodiversity is the variety of life within an ecosystem. It can be defined as the sum total of all biotic variation from the level of genes to ecosystems. It can also be defined as the biological diversity, or biodiversity is the variety of life, like I've just said, and refers collectively to the variation of all levels of biological organisation. An ecosystem is a system composed of physical, chemical, biological processes active within a space-time unit of any magnitude. That is the biotic, which is living organisms, community, plus its abiotic, physical environment. And a habitat is the specific biotic and abiotic parts of the environment where an organism lives. Okay, so I'm going to introduce 4 key theorists in ecology. And first of all, we have Dr. Edward John Kormondy. He was an academic administrator, science educator, and an author. He lectured in lots of universities across the United States, primarily the Evergreen State College, which he co-founded in 1971, and became Dean of the Natural Science Department. He was also Provost as well. He also wrote a book which was published in 1965, known as The Concepts of Ecology. So he was a key figure in the ecological sciences. Then we have someone who isn't as recognised, and his work has been criticised in more modern times with the introduction of more modern technology and modern methods. However, we have Angus John Bateman, who was an English geneticist who pioneered the study of sexual selection for many decades, and that prompted his Bateman's principle, which was the study of sexual selection, and he was noted for his study of this in fruit flies. And then we have Karl Marx. Now, many of us know Karl Marx from his political and socialist involvement in history. He was a German philosopher and political economic critic, and he was a strong figure in the socialist revolution movement. However, I only figured this out the other day. He was also an environmentalist and developed a theory of ecological crisis known as the metabolic rift between nature and society. So he wanted to build the gap between man and the progressive sort of development, which in the process was destructive to the environment and its ecology, which can still be seen today. Karl Marx was a very he had a lot of empathy with the environment and developed this theory to try and bridge this gap. So, and he was around in the 1800s, 200 years on almost, although there is more policies such as, to do with climate change, but, there's still a lot of issues, still a lot of areas that we need to progress, to make things better for our environment. Humans need to learn how to coexist with nature, and we'll go into that a little bit more at the end of this presentation. And then Charles Darwin, he was born in Shrewsbury in England, and he invented the theory of natural selection. He was a naturalist, evolutionist, writer, author. His best known book on the origin of species was published in 1859, and this sparked a mixture of popularity and controversy, because back in that era most people were very set in their traditions and religious beliefs which guided their way of life. However, when Darwin's theory came about, in that planet Earth evolved over time and that species evolved from, other organisms, our ancestors and whatnot, that kind of triggered a big kind of debate. And again, it's still debated today, but with more science and evidence available, we can conclude that Darwin's theory is fairly reliable. Okay, so now that we've looked at a bit of background into ecological theory, and the definitions of some of the key terms, now I'm going to look at how we can apply this theory into a sample captive bred leopard gecko bioactive enclosure. So, habitat replication. Now, through studying literature on leopard gecko wild habitat, there's a document by Mohammed Sharif Khan, who was a Pakistani zoologist and professor at a university in somewhere Lahore, I think it was, in Pakistan, somewhere in Pakistan. He did a field study of leopard geckos in the wild and assessed their taxonomy and wild behaviours. It's available online. You can find it on Google Scholar, ResearchGate. So I would, if you're considering advancing your husbandry for leopard geckos and wanting to know more about their wild behaviours and habitat, then I would definitely recommend that article by Mohammed Khan. So with that, for example, and utilising online tools such as Google Earth Pro, we can assess the topography, which is physical land, of an area. Kormondy's theory on habitat management, known as the mosaic nature of the environment, can be incorporated into the design phase. Now, speaking of design, my terrarium has 3 distinct zones, or you could call them microclimates, which all blend into the one biome or habitat. So starting off with the Arid Zone, the climate here is warm and mostly dry with little rainfall. So it's warm to hot in summer, where it's 32 to 38 degrees Celsius in the daytime. Cooler in winter, where it's 18 to 22 Celsius in the daytime. Humidity ranges from 35 to 55% in this zone. The topography of this zone is very dry, shaly, rocky, sparsely vegetated, and is semi-desert region. And this replicates their wild habitat of the Salt Range hills in Pakistan. Which is a mixture of dry, arid, but there is some bushland and scrubland and some kind of foresty areas as well in that area. The organisms that live in the arid zone are ground beetle, darkling beetle, brown crickets, locusts, mealworm, woodlice and dugley cockroaches. Obviously these are the custodian insects that are commonly available for captive bred species. I haven't researched. There will be wild, like centipedes and scorpions in their wild habitat, but obviously not got access to those as a food source or part of the cleanup crew, and I don't feel comfortable around giving my gecko a scorpion because of the safety issue with the stinger and whatnot. So quite happy to stick with them ones that I've listed for now. Lizard movements, typically seen hiding within the crevices and burrows during the day, basking during twilight and hunting at night. The humid zone climate here is very warm and temperate region, mild and wet winters, warm humid summers. Summer temperature 25 to 28 Celsius. Winter temperature 22 to 24 Celsius. Humidity ranging from 55 to 90 on ground level in the humid zone. The topography, so the physical environment here is very moist, fertile soils, densely vegetated, sticky, leafy, mossy. There's the odd bit of fungus, and it's very kind of wooded, woodlands, kind of leaf litter, that sort of feel to it. So the soil type is very fertile, rich, earthy, mossy soil laden with leaf litter. So the cleanup crew here, the custodians, the living organisms, are springtails, dwarf white tropical woodlice, grey woodlice, soldier flies, gnatflies, mealworm, darkling beetle, crickets, cockroaches and locusts. The lizard movements, well, he's rarely seen burrowing, hiding in the humid zone. However, when he comes to shed, he can sometimes be seen lurking around the humid area. He's often seen exploring, climbing the branches and hunting in the humid zone. However, it's usually a passing through region rather than a stopover. Then we have the cool zone, where the climate is 22 to 24 Celsius in summer and 17 to 21 Celsius in winter. So here we have cold, dry winters and cool, temperate summers. Humidity ranging from 38 to 75% in the cool zone. Now the topography here is very sort of grassy, bushy, scrubland and semi-woodland. And in my terrarium, I've created like a sort of a food forest in the humid and cool sort of zone, densely vegetated, to create ideal habitats for the bugs that live there, as well as the lizard. Shelter for the lizard, food for the bugs, works both ways. So the living organisms that we have in the cool zone are the ground beetle, the darkling beetle, woodlice, springtails, gnatflies, soldier flies, mealworm, crickets, cockroaches, centipedes, spiders and locusts. When I say centipedes, I don't mean the large poisonous Asian variety or American variety. I mean the small British variety, which they're not even the common garden centipede. They're smaller than that. They are a type of centipede, but they're very small. So they're completely harmless to the lizard. Spiders, I'm talking the daddy long-legged spider, which again, it's not poisonous to the lizard. And we have locusts here as well. Now, lizard movements, now he will hide in a network of burrows under logs during the day and at night. He actively explores this area after dark and likes to go there for hunting. So ecosystem management. Well, once the physical environment is formed within the enclosure, so when you built your arid zone, and your humid zone and your cool zone with your substrate and your drainage layer. And there is a separate video on that, so I won't go into it into detail here. But do check out my my videos on YouTube. The video I'm referring to is the quick guide to live plants in an arid bioactive setup. So do have a run around and have a look out for that one. Gives details on the substrates in the different zones and soils. So once that's established, then we can introduce the custodian insects, living organisms and living plants. And collectively they all kind of interweave and work together to build that biodiversity. So with the variety of insects and microorganisms and the variety of plants, we can create an ideal environment for the gecko to thrive, and which is crucial in terms of its development and health, really, and it's replicating its natural environment as much as possible. So we can explore some of their natural behaviours, such as burrowing and digging. So every inch of the system within that terrarium, so the physical and the non-physical, and the non-living and the living, every element of those aspects count towards the overall ecosystem. Each part, if you think of every inch of that terrarium, from the glass front doors that you open and close, to the background, to the plants, to the substrate, to the drainage layer, every single thing has a purpose in terms of the management and self-regulation and self-maintenance of the ecosystem. So it does take a lot of research, and it does take a bit of a kind of a mind, which will go on now into the conclusion. You have to be a little bit nature-minded in order to get it done. I'm not saying I'm getting it done right, because I'm not an expert, but I have experience. But I've only recently been doing it bioactively. But it just takes research and being a little bit sort of nature-minded, adopting that approach to this bioactive system, and drawing upon the evidence that you find from your research of their, like that document by Mohammed Khan. So have a look at that and consider the ecological theory that I've discussed in this presentation, and also consider the wild habitat of leopard geckos and their behaviours in their wild habitat and what they feed on. That can all help to support you maintaining a thriving bioactive enclosure. And I do hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. I have gone on a little bit. Like I say, if there's any questions that you have, please feel free to comment, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you soon. Bye.